Hi there, welcome to another Monday PST Tuts screencast video tutorial. I'm going to be taking you through Wojciech, I hope I pronounced his name right, his great tutorial on creating a shiny bass guitar illustration using nothing but Photoshop. I've never actually attempted to create something completely from scratch like a guitar or anything like that, so this is going to be my first attempt too, but I'm going to take you through all the steps, of which there are a lot, and a lot of them I think in total there's 40 something steps, so either this will be a really long screencast or it could be split over two. We'll see how we get along as we go through the tutorial. Okay, so there are all the great steps, and we're going to get started by showing you my first attempt at the tutorial. So this is what I came up with. Okay, it's not a bad start. So you can see lots of folders over here with lots of nice layers in there, and we're going to start this by creating a new canvas. We're going to set it to be 940 pixels wide by 1970 pixels high, and click on OK. And this is going to be our main stage. You can see it just goes out of the bottom of the screen a little bit there. I can just bring that up and we can play around with this. So if I just get rid of the background because it can be a little bit distracting, and we can get started. Okay, so we're going to be zooming in and out, so don't worry if you lose track, you can just pause it. Hopefully I'll go through everything so that you don't get too lost. First thing we need to do is to draw out our guitar shape. So we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to call this layer, and the naming of the layers is pretty important in this because we're going to refer back to them. We're going to call this one Wooden Top. Okay, we're going to grab our lovely pen tool over here, and we're going to start to draw out our guitar shape. And obviously you can draw any shape that you like for your guitar, but I'm going to try and aim for the one that's actually in this tutorial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start somewhere around here. Just come in a bit. Again, we can move some of these anchor points around. It's a little bit too far. Until we get something like that. Now again, if you just press A on the keyboard, or you come over here and we select this great tool, which is our direct selection tool, we can click on some of these points and we can just start to just play around with the shape of our guitar. Bring that up a little bit. Maybe even add in some other anchor points. Let's see if we can just make a nicer curve there. Okay, I'm not going to play around too much with this. Obviously it's a general guitar shape. Hopefully it's not too bad. Okay, and once you've got your shape all in place, and again, obviously you'll take your time with that, we're going to fill that with black. So what I'm going to do is just control click on it, make it a selection, set that to 0, change that to black, and I'm just going to fill in that area. Now obviously I haven't inversed my selection there, so I'm just going to quickly inverse my selection and make sure I'm only filling in the actual body of the guitar. And now what we're going to do is we're going to quickly head over and create a new document. Okay, going to set that to be something around, I don't know, 1200 by 1200. Click on OK. For my foreground color, I'm going to choose B1, 7B, 4C, and then for my background color, I'm going to choose EB, A9, 4C. Okay, and then we're going to go to Filter, Render, and Fibers. Set the variance to something like 18 and strength as high as 32, and then click on OK. And this is going to be our quick wooden grain for the guitar. Now we're going to try and add a few little knots in there. So head up to Filter, Liquify, and then grab this little tool over here. So I'll twirl clockwise, increase the size of my brush, and I'm going to add a knot in here. Just move it over so you can see all the settings here, and literally I'm just going to click and then let it just put a little knot in there, as you might get. Don't worry too much about this, they're only going to show through slightly. So I'm just going to create these really quickly, little twists in the wood. You can change the size of them, have big ones, small ones. I might have overdone a little bit, and I'm just going to make another little small one. Somewhere there. And then using this tool here, just going to expand it out a little bit. Again, just playing around with these, trying to get them to look excuse me, a little bit more like knots. Just moving into the wood grain a little bit there. Like so. I'm going to click on OK. Once I've done that, I'm going to define that as a pattern. So head over to Edit, Define Pattern, call it something like wood. Hit OK, save it. Close it down. We're going to head back over to our document, and now we're going to try and put that on top of our black layer. So the first thing we need to do is, on wooden top, we're going to go to Pattern Overlay, find our wood, just move that to the side. We can play around with this. Okay, just want a little hint of the knots. So just move that around. You can see there's a knot there, the knot there. Maybe it would have been nice to have a knot down here, but for now that's okay. We've got this big knot down here. So that sounds fine, or looks fine, sorry. Next thing I'm going to do is give it a color overlay. I'm going to set this color to a nice dark color, something like 78 4F 28. Click on multiply, and it gives us that nice dark color. Maybe just bring that opacity down just a hint, and then click on OK. I'm going to create a new layer now. We're going to call this one Shadow Body, and then on the Shadow Body layer we're going to grab the brush tool. We're going to make it nice and big and soft, so something like that. Hardness, make sure it's right down to 0. Set the foreground color to black, and we're going to paint the edges just around the side here. So I'm just going to increase the size of my brush a little bit. I'm just clicking just to give that slightly smoked effect. Like so. Okay, and once you're happy with that, we're going to deselect it. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to call this Body Lights. And on this body lights layer, we're going to go back to our paths palette, select our working path, go back to our layers palette, make sure your foreground's set to white, grab the brush tool, let's have it set on 3 or 4 pixels, something like that. And let's have hardness 100%. Okay, we've set that up, and we're going to use our pen tool, and then we're going to apply the brush settings to our pen tool. So select your pen tool, and then we're going to stroke around the sides to give it some little highlights around the edge. Okay, so with the pen tool, I'm just going to stroke. Maybe we'll give this a little bit of flair. So again, I'd hold down Control, click. Let's go to stroke the path. Click on, oh, not on pencil. Make sure you click on brush. Click on OK. Let's hit enter. You can see got that little white bit there. Now what I want to do is I just want to zoom into that area. Okay, and then with my eraser, make sure you got a nice soft edge. Just gonna blend that in a little bit more, like so. We're just highlighting this little edge, and you can go around the whole of the guitar. And as you go, you're just basically highlighting the different edges. So I'm going to move over here, grab my pen tool again. This time, I'm going to come down here. Another way to have done this, if I just undo those steps. Let's see if I can get rid of that. Okay, as I could have with my pen tool, because I went over and selected my path, then went to my layers, I could have clicked on that, stroked that original path, click on OK, and then zoom out. And then what I could have done is with the eraser then, just take out the bits that don't really need to be highlighted. So if I just quickly grab the pencil, hit enter, zoom back in a little bit onto those edges with my eraser, and you can see it just blends that in, so that area there is going to be highlighted against the black. That little corner, this area here, I might just want to blend that out. Just like that. So just getting little hints of white. What I'm going to do is just double click on my background layer. I'm going to fill that with black. Ooh. And then if we just zoom out a little bit, you can see those highlights just starting to take effect. And again, just using my rubber, some of these areas are still very, very strong. So just ooh. Make sure you're on the right layer. Just want it to be hints. Like so. So I'm pretty happy with that. This area here is a little bit choppy, so just a couple more strokes. I'm happy with that. Right, the next thing we need to do is create a new layer, and that's going to be for our fretboard. So again, I might just group all of these. Call that body. Create a new layer. Call it fretboard. And we're going to bring on some rulers just to make sure we've got enough of a guide so that we can make sure that it's perfectly straight and make sure that it's all set with the guitar. Now you can see I've got a lot of room at the bottom here, but not a lot of room. It would be a very short neck or fretboard coming up the top of this. So I need to move everything down. So I'm just going to quickly just bring that right down to about there. And that should give us plenty of room at the top. So on the fretboard, we're going to bring in our guides. So I'm just going to drag that across to about there. Yeah, that looks okay. Have it about that thick. And again, as you go through this, you're just going to play around with it until you get the exact widths and thicknesses that you're happy with. And so once you've got those two outer ones, we're going to bring in a couple just inside like that. And like that. Now that might give me quite thin top of the neck as we go through it, but hopefully you can play around and go back a few steps and make the neck look exactly how you want it to look. But we're going to use these guides, we're going to use them. We also might need to bring in one just to say right about there. Another one down here, and that's where the fretboard's going to end. And we're just going to use the pen tool going from the outer guides to the inner guide to get that angle on our neck. So once you've drawn out the guides, head over to the pen tool, and we're just going to connect the corners. So I'm going to click on this one here, and this one here, this one here, and finally that one there, and finish it off. We're going to make that a selection. Just Control click on that, and then we're going to fill it with a white. So make sure you are on that fretboard and change that to white. Make sure you inverse your selection if it's selecting the whole area. So we just want this middle bit here. Just fill it like so. So I'm going to get quite a thin top of the neck, but that should be okay. It won't look too bad. Once you've done that, we're going to go over to the layer styles. We're going to apply the wood pattern. So again, double click on that, head over to wood pattern, grab your wood pattern, put it into place if you want the knots to be clearly visible, or you just want the hint, like this little hint of a knot down here, and that's fine. So scale that to fit, head over to color overlay, again we can set this to black, make sure you have it on multiply, and then again we're just going to lower the opacity right down. We're going to give it just a slightly off colour, just slightly dark, but when you zoom in you'll still see that little knot in there. Okay, so that looks good. I'm going to click on OK there. We've connected all of those things together now. Now what we're going to do is connect the fretboard to the body. So just here we're going to have a little angle. Again, we're going to use the pen tool to do that. So I'm going to deselect that down there. It's going to create another layer. Maybe call this a little connector. Just zoom in. I'm going to click about here. Here. And we kind of want to go with the flow of the top of the guitar and down with the neck. So once you've drawn your fretboard, we're going to make sure our foreground is white, make sure our brush is set up, ready, again set that to 1 pixel, hardness on 100%, and then we're going to stroke that path. So back to our pen tool, hold down Control, click on that, and stroke the path. Brush, yeah, and then we can hit Enter. Okay, now if we zoom out, don't worry too much about it because we're going to come back to this bit a little bit later on, but just a reminder that that's the way that the guitar is going to be connected, the body is going to be connected to that neck. Okay, so once you've got that we're going to select the fretboard and we're going to create a new layer. Okay, and that's going to be the fretboard shadow. So just click in here, create a new layer, and this is going to be fretboard shadow. Hold down command, click on our actual fretboard, make sure we're still on our new shadow layer, and I'm just using the keyboard. I'm just going to nudge this down a little bit. We're going to create a shadow down in this area down here, so just going to zoom into that area. Okay, let's make sure we're on move tool. Ooh. Okay, that's not letting me do it. Make sure we're on move. Okay, I just want to move the selection, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it with a little bit of black. Put it underneath there, and then just move that down. Okay, you want it about, I don't know, about a centimetre or something like that. Or what's that in? About 10 or so pixels. You're just shoving it down that little bit, and that's going to be the shadow for the actual neck. We're going to have a shadow going down the side. So that looks okay once you've moved it down a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to remove the top part. So I'm going to grab my marquee tool, and then holding down Alt, I'm just going to minus everything else. Probably could have zoomed out for that, but okay, and then straight back down. You can see what a nice little wood effect there. We should just have this area down here. Now once you've got this area at the bottom, we're going to select black as our foreground colour down here. Then we're going to go to the gradient tool, and we're going to go from foreground colour to transparent. So gradient, just like we've got there. And then we can lower the opacity in a second, but we're just going to play around with just getting a hint of that shadow in there. Okay, so if I just deselect that, you can see you've got this slight little shadowy layer, and I'm going to bring the opacity maybe something like that, and then I'm going to duplicate that layer. And then I'm just going to rotate it. Oh. Make sure we grab the right area. Chuck that in the bin. Placing that little area there. Going to transform that, flip it on its side. I'm going to move it to this edge over here, like that. Okay, I'm going to grab my eraser tool. Just going to put that just a little bit like so, so it blends up. Right now, it's going to be a little bit harsh. Okay, and what we've actually created there is just a little bit of a drop shadow to the actual neck, so it just stands out that extra little bit. Once you've done that with your foreground, we've copy and pasted it and moved it to the side. The next thing we need to do is look at the pickups. Okay, so we still need these guides on. Okay, but you can see that little drop shadow just added a little bit of edge to our top fretboard there. We're going to start working on our actual pickups now. We're going to have two pickups that are rectangular, and then we're going to have, which are quite short and stubby, the main pickups, and then a long one down at the bottom, we're going to play around with that. Basically, we're just going to create one pickup and then replicate it for all of the others. So the first thing we need to do is stick all of these into a group. Let's call that board. Create a new group. Call it pickups. And let's create our first layer. So for our pickups, we need to have 5 guidelines. Okay, we need to have 2 to the sides of these. So I'm going to use the same ones that we've got. I'm just going to shift them over slightly so that one's going to go over here, over here, and then these 2 need another one right down the middle, like so. Then what you need to do is head over to the rectangular tool. You can hit U on the keyboard and then it takes you to it. I didn't have it selected there. And then we're going to grab the rounded edge. We're going to draw out our first pickup. So the first thing we need to do is zoom in a little bit. Okay, and our first pickup is going to go to this far left hand side. So we're going to start it about here. And it's going to come all the way in to here. Okay, make that a selection. Okay, we're going to fill that pickup. Okay, now it's a selection. Going to fill that with a colour along the lines of 1, 7, 1D, 1E. Click on OK. I'm just going to fill that. We can call this pickup 1. Okay, next thing we need to do is create another layer below this one. And this is going to be the depth layer. Give the image some depth. Excuse me. On the depth layer, we're going to command click on our first layer. I already have the selection selected, and we're going to fill that layer with black. So change back to black, fill it with black, and again using the move tool we're just going to move it 2 pixels down and 2 pixels to the right, like so. Then I'm going to go to filter, I'm going to go to blur, Gaussian blur, set that to about 1.6. Click on OK. Head over to filter and noise. Add some noise. Let's add 0.81. Make sure it's on uniform and monochromatic is ticked. And click on OK. If we go to the layers palette, and we're going to give it a stroke of 1 pixel. Make sure that's black. Click on OK, and click on OK. And we can deselect that. And we're starting to take shape a little bit now. Okay. Inside of this area, we're going to start to play around with the actual look of it and the cornering, some of the highlights of the inside, just to make it look like it really is 3D and sticking at the top of the wood. So we go back to our pickup. I'm going to select that area again. I'm going to go to selection, modify and contract. Contract it by about 4 pixels. Okay. Then we're going to grab our burn tool down here. Once you've got burn tool selected, we're just going to burn the inner edges in the top right corner, so this area here. So I'm just going to drag this along. Oh, make sure you're on the pickup layer, my mistake. And just, oh, a bit too much there. Let's make sure that's set to a nice soft brush. Okay, I'm just going along the top. Let's zoom in. I'm going on the top layer here and the right hand side down there. So I'm going to lower the exposure as well down to about 30. Yeah, that's about right. We're just going across the top like so. We're just giving it a slightly worn kind of feel. Make sure that corner's nice and done. Once you've done that, you've burnt that layer, we're just darkening that top right corner. We're going to create a new layer above the pickup layer. We're going to call this layer Shadows and Light. We're going to go Selection, Modify and expand it back. Again, 4 pixels takes us back. We're going to go to a brush tool on a low flow. So make sure we lower this flow right the way down. Like so. To about 30, something like that. And we're going to whiten the little top area, give it a little bit of a highlight. So just this edge around here. So I'm going to increase the size of my brush. Make sure you've got white selected. And again, we're just going opacity, lower that down a little bit more. Around the top. And then come down. Like so. And then play around with the opacity. You can just set that back down. You can start to see it's starting to take shape, just highlighting that area. Okay, once you've done that, we can move on, and we're going to switch to our dodge tool now. So go back to where it says burn and hit dodge, and we're going to paint the left side of our pickup layer, so this area in here. Okay, so make sure again that you're on the same area. Make sure you've got highlights selected up here in the top, and we're just going to be doing dodging this area in here, just making it a little bit lighter. So I'm going to go back to our pickup layer, and again you can just see very subtly it's starting to take effect. Let's increase the exposure a little bit. Okay, just zoom out a little bit. Okay, shadow and lights, we need to lower that right down. Just like so. Okay, that's starting to look good. Now what we need to do is we need to add a shadow layer. Okay, so we're going to copy this group 2 times. So again, in fact, if we just merge them. Like so. And then Command E, just merge them all together. Going to zoom in, and we're going to just give a little white highlight to this area down here. So using the pen tool, just going to grab that in like so. Set my brush tool to 100% opacity, 100% flow. Maybe 2 pixels. Make sure we create a little new layer. Okay, and then stroke our path. And again, just bring down the opacity just a touch. I'm going to grab the rubber, and I'm just going to just fade it in that little bit on the edges so it's not so harsh. Hopefully when you zoom out, it gives us a nice edge. Okay, so I'm happy with that. We need to create the drop shadow for this that comes down even further, a little bit like the same that we did for the neck of our guitar. So I'm just going to zoom back in, move to the right, and what we're going to do is, if we go to Command and select this area here, create a new layer, fill it with black, bring it right underneath everything, and I'm just going to go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and then filter, noise, add noise. Fill that area. So if I can deselect, hopefully that's starting to stand out just a little bit. Let's zoom out and have a look. Okay, that's looking okay. I'm going to duplicate these layers now so that we can have all of our pickups in the right place. So again, I'm just going to merge all of those together, and then holding down Alt, I'm going to move this down and to the right, and then I'm going to move the other one right down to about here, and I'm going to transform this one, and I'm going to hit enter, and that makes for that very bottom pickup. Okay, the next thing to do is to do our screws. Okay, so we're going to head back up to that initial one, and we're going to create a screw here and a screw on the other side for each of the pickups. So above the pickups, we're going to create a new group, and these are going to be called screws. Hit on enter, new layer inside screws. On that new layer, we're going to call it pickup screws. Hit OK. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the marquee tool, and we're going to draw out our circles. If you hold down Shift, it'll make a perfect circle. So we're going to draw it about there. We're going to fill it with a light grey, something like that. Okay, then we're going to apply a stroke of 1 pixel and make it black. So we can come over here, make that black, set that to 1. Okay, click on OK. Then we're going to zoom in even more onto this little screw, and then we're going to use the brush tool, and we're going to have a darker area down here and light grey at the top. So if I set black but lower the opacity, like so, then I'm going to grab darker grey, go a little bit darker again, and if we just zoom out, start to see that that looks like a little bit like a screw head. So we need to copy that 5 times. So head over to Move tool, hold down Alt. If you hold down Shift, it's going to keep it perfectly in line with that screw. Going to grab that, move that down to this one right here. Just moving it across like so, and there's our screws for our pickups. Okay, the next step is to move on to our bridge, and this bit can get a little bit complicated, but we're going to have 5 more vertical guides to help us as we go through this. So we're going to keep these guides here. I'm just going to move these ones around, so they need to be perfectly spaced. We're going to have it in about this area here. So okay, so there's one. Okay, try and get them evenly spaced. It's a little bit off. Let's move them over a little bit. Okay, I'm happy with that. And then we're going to need, just bring one last guide down to there. And actually, let's have another one down here so we can get the height of these just right. Okay, so once your guides are in layer, we're going to create a new group. This group's going to be called Bridge. Okay. Inside that group, we're going to create a new layer. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw out a vertical line going down here. So I'm going to zoom right in, like so. Grab the brush tool, set it to 1 pixel. Make sure the hardness is on 100, which it is. Foreground color, we're going to set to be 171D 1E. Okay, grab our pen tool. We're going to draw a line from about here to, say, here. Draw a click, stroke the path using that brush that we set up, and click on OK. Once you've done that, we're going to remove the guide just so we can see our line by itself. We're going to just hit enter on the pen tool, get rid of the path. OK. And what we're going to do is we're going to command click on our line. All that is. And we're going to grab our brush tool and we're going to go to flow, and let's have a low flow and a low opacity, something like that. And in the middle of it, we're going to just paint in some white in here. Okay, I might need to make that a little bit. There we go. Just in the middle, he's going to paint on a tiny little bit of white in there. Okay, once you've done that, we're going to draw out on another layer. Grab our rectangular tool. Make sure you've got it set up here onto paths, and we're going to draw out a background layer that's going to go all the way around the bottom. And these are basically, this is the bit of hardware that holds the strings in place, the bridge. So all you need to do is just draw it out so it's just a little bit above, something like that. Let's make that a little bit fatter. It's too round at the minute, so if I Control Z that, the radius down to say 5. Yeah, it's a bit better. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fill in this area. Excuse me. So set the foreground to black. I'm going to move this under. Let me just call this line. And what we're going to do is we're going to fill that with black. After we make it into a selection. Oh, one layer. Let's draw that out one last time. Finally, just fill it in. Okay, and that's still with that blue colour, so let's make sure we've got black selected. Okay, brilliant. Once you've filled in that area there, we're going to call that B round 1. Okay, and that's below our line 1. We're going to create another new layer and call it light. foreground set to white. We're going to highlight the top left tip of this area here. So just going to grab our pen tool and we're just going to go from here to here. Make sure our brush tool's on 1 pixel, 100%. Everything else, let's put the flow and opacity right up for now. Back to our pen tool and click, stroke the path, click OK and hit enter. And I'm just going to move that just up into that area there. Lower the opacity a little bit so it doesn't stand out too much. Then I'm going to hold down Alt, move it over to the right, just going to transform that, move it into place, like so. Grab the pencil, again, just lower the opacity a little bit. Grab the eraser tool, we're just going to break out. Just want to have a hint of lightness there. Let's zoom out and have a look how that's starting to look. Yeah, that's looking okay. Let's take it down a little bit more with our opacity. And again, all of this may seem like I'm rambling on, but it is playing around. You're not going to get exactly the same effect as me, and I didn't get exactly the same effect as the first tutorial, but you just got to play around until the size of things that you've done starts to actually look like it could pass through a part on the actual guitar itself. Once you've done that, we're going to create another new layer. We're going to create a white bar that goes from the middle across to the left, and it's going to be called Silver Line. So I'm going to create that right now. Okay, so Silver Line, it's going to be white, so make sure you've got your white. Yep, that was white, okay. And set our brush tool to 2 or 3 pixels. Let's go with 3 for this one. Hardness set to 100, flow set to 100. And we're going to draw a horizontal line and then we're going to stroke it. So it needs to come just over halfway there. Oop. About there to, let's say, there. Hold down Shift will make it a nice straight line. Control click, stroke the path, it's going to be white. Click on OK. It's not white, I had it set on black, so just flip that round. Stroke the path again and click on OK. That looks fine. Could be a little bit thick, but we won't know until we've kind of put them all together, and then you'd have to go back and change it. But for now, 3 pixels looks about right. So I'm going to erase some of the middle of this white line. So something about there. Like that. Okay, that looks fine. And basically, that's going to help with the overall effect when we start to put these pieces together. Okay, it's going to take a break and we'll come back to this in about 5 seconds.